Hello and welcome to my video about Wicked. This is something of an overdue book review and a metamedia analysis. I like to think of myself as a bit of a dramaturg, so I like to look at source material and cultural influences and aspects that go into creating a production, creating the writing for it, and I also really love adaptation. I think that stuff's really cool. So this is my video about it. I had read the book Wicked like a year or two ago. I want to say maybe 2 or 3 years ago even. And I had some feelings about it, so I wanted to just share that, and in relation to the musical, especially since the movie's about to come out, so I just kind of wanted to look at that. And so thanks for watching this video and coming on this journey with me. This channel is more of a video sketchbook for me than it is a channel I care about likes and subscribes. What I'd rather, if you want to put your comments down below, I would love to hear about your comments. I'd love to hear about what your thoughts, things you thought were interesting, things you want to hear more about. If you want me to do a video about the book, which I have this version. You can also find another version online that I think is just a picture of the Wicked Witch of the West, like in a nice little illustration. This one is affiliated with the musical. So we've got like pictures of the production in here, which is pretty neat. I enjoy that. One thing I do like about the novel book also, is it has a map. I'm a big fan of maps. I don't remember if the original Wizard of Oz had a map or not, but I love a good map in a book. And I also have with me this Grimoire. I unfortunately have not done my homework and have not read this in its entirety yet. However, I really think it's quite a cool book. I've flipped through it a couple times. I've read part of it. Here we have a nice little cast picture, I believe, of the original cast. And also what I really like about this book is it has a timeline starting from Lyman Frank Baum, the author of Wizard of Oz, starting from his birth and going all the way to the production of Wicked, which I believe was in 2015. So here's also the rest of that timeline. And it goes through too of the movie Wizard of Oz and how important that was, Judy Garland, other writings, and yeah, when the book Wicked was written, which I believe was in like 1995. Yeah. So just cool little like timeline in there. Yes, I also have my little Squishmallows from my partner. We've kind of gone to collecting those lately, and also this lovely little guy is my buddy over here. And yeah, so that's kind of what I've got going on here. I will try to keep this pretty spoiler free up until I start talking about the book more directly. And the musical, I'm going to talk about my own timeline with Wicked, talk about spoiler area. I'll put it in the comments. I'll put some, timestamps and things, but then also I'll wrap up with what I hope to see in the movie, and I'll try to keep that spoiler free as well. So my experience with Wicked starts all the way back in high school in, I believe, 2008. Everybody, of course, when Wicked came out, it was a big deal. Everybody thought it was really cool. I knew about it being like, ooh, like maybe it's a little queer of a story, and that was fun as well. But one really distinct memory I have is I think we were just about to go on for the production of Arsenic and Old Lace in like 2007, 2008. It was our fall play, and then we usually have a spring musical. One of the assistant directors, in her excitement for like, oh man, you guys are so great, like we did so good for this production, the spring musical is going to be so good, said the spring musical is going to be Wicked, meaning like it's going to be cool. Yeah. Everybody lost their shit because like, oh my god, we're getting Wicked. And like I'm pretty sure like there's copyright reasons why schools do older musicals and things, so it was just kind of funny, and she had to be like, no guys, I mean, we don't know what it's going to be. I think it ended up being Les Mis. And in college, I had a roommate and friend who was really into musicals, who I really appreciate. And I always appreciate my musical-driven friends because sometimes they expose me to media that I might not have heard about or might not be familiar with. And especially in college, for being a theater major, I didn't know a lot of musicals or a lot of musical music. And so auditioning for me at that time, I think was a little rougher than it would be now because I just have a wider range of music I know to choose from. Anyways, this roommate pulled up like a bootleg recording of Wicked, and I just was not impressed. I'm like, doesn't live up to the hype. I think it's just like way overhyped and way over exaggerated. But I did come to like it and appreciate it at the end. I felt like, oh, okay, that was worth watching. I liked the end. I liked the end. I didn't really care for the rest of it. I liked the end. And for me, frankly, endings can be a make or break for me. If it's an ending where like everybody dies or like I don't understand why I just watched that. I'm like, no, I didn't like that. But then I will say, seeing it live, that changed my mind. I really enjoyed the production of it, the stage magic and the machinations, the sort of ephemera you get from a live production. And I really enjoyed like the choreography. Getting to see it live, it resonated more with me. And also it when I had seen it happened to be in 2016, which was another election year. And so the political themes really seemed pertinent and interesting at that time of, what kind of propaganda is out there? How do we choose our alliances or choose to believe what we want to believe? How do we feel about things versus what is the actual truth? But anyways, so I've seen the musical twice since. It's come through the Fabulous Fox Theater a couple more times. It does come through every few years if you happen to be a St. Louisian and want to see it. Keep your eyes out. It's cool to see. For me, like, I love working there and getting to see the differences in cast choices, or if there's maybe different choices being done with, slight adjustments in movements and delivery of things. All right, so now we're charting into spoiler alert territory. I'm going to start talking about the book. So I feel like when I read the book, maybe unpopular opinion, but I didn't really super like it. It made me pretty uncomfortable. I felt like at some times it was needlessly grotesque or vulgar or cruel. The physical descriptions of pain or damage were just so gnarly, while some things were sexualized in weird ways, or like if there was maybe a moment of like, ooh, like I would be interested to see more or hear more about this, like wouldn't have any detail. And there were some things that were hard for me to imagine, like the dragon clock in there, I think is a cool idea. I don't know that I remember any descriptions that I like. I think there was a weird part in there where there's like a little sort of, how a TikTok clock might have little dancing creatures and such. There was like something that it was like maybe like an orgy or threesome, and there was like foul smelling gravy coming from the machine. Just really weird. It goes for this steampunk thing, but I don't think it's done in a very fun steampunky or fantastical way. I did take some notes when I first had read it because my memory is a little foggy, and I could go for a reread of the book. I don't want to totally dunk on it. I think there are some interesting things. I've obviously post-it noted it a couple of times. I'll go back to some of my favorite excerpts in here. But I will say I did like the description of the grimoire. There's a selection in here that I thought was actually really cool. Let me pull it up. Nothing in the grimoire on how to depose a tyrant. Nothing useful. Armies of holy angels were not answerable to her. Nothing there that described why men and women could turn out so horrible or so wonderful, if that ever happened anymore. Like, we're a little nihilistic philosopher over here. Okay. Obviously there's a good and evil theme. You can find some really good descriptions and synopsis online. One other thing I just kind of felt about the book was that it felt like it had this undercurrent of what either is like really good like satire and portrayal of like evil thoughts or something, but also like maybe were Gregory Maguire's sort of like biases or preconceived notions of beauty and drama, or maybe like a little bit of sexism or queer phobia in there as well. So I think it's worth reading, but just take a cultural and analytical lens to it. Don't just read it like it's a light reading. Some people talk about how it's more political. I think that the musical does a good job of still capturing the most political piece that I think works very well in this story, talking about how animals are meant to be seen and not heard. They're trying to silence animals and trying to blame those problems on the animals or Munchkinlanders, or, how we divide people. I think that there is more nuance and things added into the book that are worth reading. I think there's two religions, like people who worship the unnamed god versus Selenites. And I think that there are other interesting concepts. But for the most part, big differences that I don't think that the musical loses out on. For starters, when Elphaba is born, she's misconceived as whether or not she's a boy or a girl. They kind of call her It for a little while, which I don't really care for. I don't think that she has a name for some time. It's not like she was named right out of the womb. Her birth was kind of gross, and like the midwives were really awful. Like they were like saying like, "Oh, we should drown the thing," and then like Elphaba has these nasty jagged teeth and like bites a midwife's finger off, and that's like, ugh. So I didn't like that, and for me it kind of solidified this idea of like, oh, there's like true genuine evilness straight out the womb that Elphaba has, while I think the musical does a good job of like, oh my god, she's hideously green, she's gonna be awful, I hate that. Like more of an idea of our prejudices and not just like, okay, like actual damage like that is happening. I think also in the book there's some differences between Glinda's and Elphaba's relationship. I do think that at first, like, they kind of don't like each other, or at least their living situation. Galinda is a little upper class and snooty tooty, and thinks that her nanny's arranged for her to have her own spot, but for whatever reason, she gets assigned a dormitory with Elphaba. It's portrayed a little differently. I think that she maybe isn't quite so awful or rude to Madame Morrible, or at least less of a ditz about it. But then they do get to appreciating one another. And there's this really little nice bit on page 79 where Elphaba is reading a book and Glinda's like, hey, well, what you reading? And Elphaba says, this one is thinking about good and evil, whether they really exist at all. And then they have a really cool little dialogue about good and evil for the next few pages. I think, though, like, Glinda is actually good at magic in the book, while in the musical, she's not. She's just, like, kind of popular and skirts off with her prestige or, looks or whatever, more so than her actual magical talent. And I think that the way that the musical sort of emphasizes and criticizes that is more interesting. In this, I think they're both pretty competent magic students. Another big difference, too, is in the musical, Nessa Rose is confined to a wheelchair. I think that works well visually and theme-wise. However, in the book, like, she just doesn't have arms. I'm just like, okay. I would be interested to see if there's, like, something about if the physical disability community feels a way about that. I feel like it's an odd choice, and it doesn't seem to be as direct in the musical. It's because, oh my gosh, like her mother, because Elphaba came out green, her mother munched on like a flower or whatever it was, and that's why Nessa Rose came out with her legs tangled. I don't know if there's an explanation why Nessa Rose doesn't have arms in the book. And again, to me, the fact that I can't remember these things speaks to how the book just didn't really capture me. I definitely am a believer in revisiting media that I don't like at the first go, especially with Wicked the musical. I mean, I did not like it at first, but then I came to like it. Maybe I'll read the book again and I'll get more out of it or appreciate it more, but as it stands, I just felt like it was odd. There's this other part as well. I was at the Crack Fox last night to go see a drag show, which, by the way, support your drag queens, drag performers as you can, because who knows what the world's going to look like in a couple of months. At this drag show, I told a couple of people about like, oh yeah, I want to do this video. And I was very delighted to hear somebody else use this term to describe the event that happens in the book, nowhere to be seen in the musical. There is this part where like some of the shiz students go out to like this speakeasy kind of thing, and there's like this underground orgy happening where a tiger is involved. So me and this companion who I was chatting with both called it the tiger orgy. That's always how it's kind of lived in my mind. And I'm just like, I don't remember liking the description of it or really understanding exactly what was going on either. However, one thing I kind of liked was one of my wonderful artist friends who does like print work, is like just so talented. I really like her work, Nina Marlotti. Go follow her on Instagram. I saw this piece shortly after finishing this book, or at least finishing that part of the book. And for me, a picture's worth 1,000 words. This to me is more interesting and captivates my interest more than whatever the description was in the book of whatever that was. When they go to meet the wizard, I want to say it's under different sort of circumstances, maybe less hopefulness or maybe to confront him. But one thing that's very different between the book as I remember it versus The Wizard of Oz and Wicked, they share this more in common, this illusion of power, which to me that's more interesting. The wizard in Wicked, the novel, is very powerful, is described as like this, you know, crazy glowing orb of fire or something, like actually genuinely powerful, and like his little, you know, oh, I'm hiding behind the curtain. I don't remember there being any moments of that. And to me, that wasn't as interesting. Also, the way that the witches depart, I believe, is very different. I think that in the book, Elphaba and Glinda are supposed to get on a carriage or something to go back to the train, to go back to the school. But Elphaba just like kisses her on the mouth and is like, goodbye forever. And like, that's it. So like, it's like, okay, sure, I guess. And then she runs off, has like a cat that I think dies. Is like sad. Not fun, not fun. Fiyero goes and meets her, which also Fiyero, the sort of love interest, I can't remember his sort of journey throughout this book, or if he ends up being persecuted because of his association with Elphaba, or because in the book he's actually a specific sort of race. I can't remember what the name is, but it's like they have like diamonds on their skin or something. Like, that's kind of cool. I think they have some interesting descriptions of characters in here. I have a little bit of that like difficulty, or like need a little extra time to imagine how that looks. The fact that they didn't use that in the musical makes me wonder how much impact it really had in the book, or if it was necessary. One thing that's important within this story of pre-Oz is that animals can speak. And there are some interesting conversations that Elphaba has with animals in the book. I don't know if they are done with the same level of like care and softness in the musical, and that's, you know, take it or leave it how it is. That's interesting because basically the wizard is trying to suppress animal kind to not speak, and to also be the literal scapegoat of the problems of Oz. Some other good quotes I found is kind of like a become ungovernable bit where Elphaba says, I am not suited to govern anyone, not even myself, it seems. And I don't even know, that's like the wizard is talking with her. Hang on a second. So yeah, okay, I don't even remember this, but like the witch meets with the wizard well after she's gone into hiding and all this sort of thing. And she's like, hey, I met you before. I don't even know. It's like she had to clutch herself to keep from vomiting. Okay. She describes that he was a skeleton with lighted bones dancing in a storm. And he says, "Oh, yes, that was clever, that was. Were you impressed?" And she says, "Sir, I think you are a very bad wizard." And he says, "And you are only a caricature of a witch." It's just like, I don't know. I guess he's asking for the Grimmery so he can be powerful, but like, I don't know. I just feel like it's not as effective as the sort of, oh, I can't even read the Grimmery, I don't even know how to use it kind of thing that the musical does. Also, at one point, I really almost stopped reading this book straight up. I was like ready to just like, nope, mm-mm. Uh, like, there's this boy, Lear, who is like, I guess Alphaba's son. I'm not sure. A young boy, and he like almost drowns in a well, but she like saves him. But the description is just really gross. Like, she's giving him CPR and she grimaced and nearly vomited and spit something into a bucket, and then she sank her mouth down on the child's and breathed out, pushing into the sour passage her own sour breath. Her fingers tensed at the sides of the butcher's block, gouging splinters as if in an ecstasy of sexual tension. Sir, this is a child. This is a child that is maybe this person's son. Like, that's just gross. Like, and if you're gonna pick an adjective, like sexual tension, maybe like deathly tension or gruesome tension, like anything else. Like, why? And it just, to me, like, kind of with the queer themes of what Elphaba might represent, comes off as queer phobic, or like that whole idea of um like incest or pedophilia. I don't even like that. I don't even like that being suggested, and I just use a different adjective, dude. Like, ugh, that made me just crawl. I'm glad I kept reading, because after that I obviously had some more notes to tag. There's a point where Bach and Elphaba meet again too, and there's a good quote: "People who claim that they're evil are usually no worse than the rest of us." It's people who claim that they're good, or anyway better than the rest of us, that you have to be wary of. I'm like, yep, that's a good one. That's a good quote. I like that. And there's one point where the witch, I don't even know who she's talking to in this, but is it only in youth that we can have the nerve to ask ourselves such serious questions? Maybe they're talking about good and evil and things. But I think that's interesting, of like, keep being analytical, being, speculative, and looking close eye on those sorts of things. Good quote here: "And would we recognize the unnamed God if it knocked on our doors?" I think that's a cool idea, because there is a lot to be said of religiousness and how we express our maybe religious thoughts and feelings, and how we live truly. Would we be kind to others that might knock on our door, as if it could be your own God? I don't know, that kind of idea is really filtered in Christianity, and lately with the sort of evangelical interpretation of some of those things that totally turn it on its back. I don't think that some people would recognize your neighbor to love as oneself, or Jesus in disguise, or anything of that nature. Okay, so there's a little piece where she talks about remembering the Cowardly Lion or something, and in the book it says, was she just glorifying herself in hindsight of how she handled the situation with that? And so I thought that was actually maybe an interesting thought of how the musical is portrayed. Perhaps it's sort of an unreliable narrator situation, where the musical is how Elphaba remembers how she came to be. I think that might be an interesting interpretation, to read this book and then watch the musical, and kind of look at, what would it, from a certain character's perspective, what would they have remembered? How would they have remembered it? Is it maybe being spoken from an outsider perspective, or somebody in the book, in the main storyline, and the things they cared to remember and the things they didn't care to remember? because obviously there's not a tiger orgy in the musical. Oh yeah, also in this book, the Wicked Witch, Elphaba, does die from water. Throughout the book, she always has to bathe herself with oil or something. So yeah, she actually does die from water in The Wizard of Oz and in this book. However, in the musical, spoiler alert, she just pretends that water kills her and then she runs away happily ever after with Fiyero. So, interesting thought. There are more books in this series as well. I kind of don't have any interest in reading them. I think they're about like that Lear kid or like her descendants or something. I don't know if I really love this writing style. I know I have some people who I highly respect and regard that do like the book, so I don't want to dismiss it totally. I think there's some interesting pieces. It might have just been how I took it at the time, the pieces that really stuck with me or made me uncomfortable, like in a way of like, not like, oh, I'm uncomfortable, like, oh, this is just gross. Like, I always try to be cognizant of the things that make me uncomfortable and what kind of discomfort that is, and if I have something to learn or grow from it. But it was just, yeah, needlessly grotesque and cruel is how I kind of came to find it. Moving on to the musical. And as for like the musical, the stage musical, I think I've kind of outlined a lot of reasons why I like it and how it's portrayed. I think I've talked about a lot of the differences between the book. I also did read Wizard of Oz to kind of look for certain correlations. One thing I really like, I'll talk about a couple of things that I like that the musical does that I don't think the book nor the original text of Wizard of Oz does. It explains the backstory of the Scarecrow, the Cowardly Lion, the Tin Man very well. One thing in the book, and that I think is true in the original text, is that the glass slippers that belong to Nessa, or the Wicked Witch of the East, are glass. They're glass slippers, not ruby. And I think that in the musical and in the Technicolor movie, The Wizard of Oz, they're ruby, and that was to show off the Technicolor colorfulness of ruby. So I think that that's kind of interesting that they used that for whatever medium that it was better suited for. Other things I think were cool that the musical did was there is the magical elixir in the book, but it's a totally different context. I really do like the music of the musical. I like The Wizard and I. It's very hopeful, like, oh my gosh, like, what amazing things I'll do. I like the line, my future is unlimited. And I like the kind of twist of that, of when you learn your heroes are not as powerful as you may think they are, that you're like, fuck it, I'm gonna do my own thing, I was like, that's great. I really liked Defying Gravity. Idina Menzel is iconic. Oh yeah, the fact that Elphaba is actually a talented sorcerer while Glinda is not, I think creates that extra contrast, which, if I haven't said it before, I think that's the one thing that's done very well in adaptations from book or movie to musical, is really exacerbate and emphasize those differences. So to have her be like super ditzy, super privileged, like does very well and did very well at that time of that sort of Legally Blonde, Mean Girls era. I think that that was a good way to juxtapose the two witches more within the context of a live theatrical performance. Let's see, I feel like I have some other things to say about it. And I think with that, I might even just move right on to how I'm feeling about the movie and things I'm looking forward to. I think that they've tuned down that juxtaposition a little bit. Ariana Grande isn't being like super bubbly. She's just kind of being like her cool girl, which at first I was kind of like, oh, I don't know how I feel about Ariana Grande being, don't hate on me, don't hate on me. But then thinking about it, I'm like, this is more appropriate to this time. So the adaptation is doing a good job of that. And also, like, you can make more subtle choices once you go to film. And from what I see, I'm really excited about Michelle Yeoh's portrayal of Madame Morrible as well, because in the musical she's very but in the movie she seems much more like, ooh, powerful and demure, you know? So I think that that will be interesting to see. I'm very excited to see that. I'm excited. I'm so sorry I don't remember the person who's playing Elphaba. Yeah, I'm interested to see how it goes. I think the movie will do, I hope the movie will do some very interesting things with the magic things that happen. And I'm interested to see if they do make any changes or if they just plop in a new song. That's fine. I get it, you know? So I'm looking forward to that. And from my understanding, it's just the part one of Wicked, which, if you watch the trailer, it pretty well encapsulates the sort of general whole chunk of the first act of the musical. So if they just ended at that point to define gravity, I won't be mad about it, but also like, okay, it seems like the trailer kind of hit our main points to some point. I don't know, y'all, that might kind of be it. That might be kind of all I have to say. I'm looking forward to seeing how the movie represents this story. I think it's an interesting story. I think it definitely, of course, has a lot of pop culture, has gotten people into musicals that might not normally watch them. We definitely get a different crowd of people who come to see Wicked versus just our regular Broadway subscribers. We get a lot more people interested in it. And I'm always here to talk about how good and important it is to have media that reaches out to more people. I think that's a really cool thing that we can always look towards, and I'm not, you know, I'm not gatekeepy about any of that sort of thing. So yeah, that might be all I kind of have to say. If you would, if you have more interest in the novel, put that in the comments. I would be happy to do maybe even like a chapter by chapter read through and commentary if anybody like has interest in that. That might be a fun little project to give it a reread and maybe for me to appreciate more about the book as well. I might do something like that. If you have more interest in this Grimoire book and want to see more of like, you know, they have like pictures. Oh yeah, look at this. Oh wow, perfect. Got your Fiyero, like these like character descriptions and cool stuff just going on. If anybody has like, I don't know, any interest in that, that would be cool. I would be happy to do videos on more detail, and I think I will do a video on the movie maybe after part 2 comes out. But if there's anything that anyone watching kind of is curious about or would like to hear more about, I'm here for that. I'm just trying to think if I have any other last minute things I might have missed. I'm not going to go too heavy on editing this, just because this is just for my practice. And I just hope you enjoyed it and got something out of watching. One last thing I'll talk about is I got this cute little pin that says Witch's Brew on it, which if you ever go to a bar and order a Witch's Brew, it's a fun way to get a fun, non-alcoholic cocktail of some sort. If you want to just leave it up to bartender's choice, it's usually a blend of whatever juices they have on hand, like cranberry juice, orange juice, pineapple juice, maybe some Sprite. You can also, of course, ask to have your own little blend, and I really personally relish the opportunity as a bartender to make people who are abstaining for whatever reason still make their time going out fun and have them have a cute, fun little drink that they can take a picture of with their friends and talk about. I don't know, that might be it. Might just be it.